There is a cockatoo in Australia named Cookie. Cookie was hatched in 1933. He lived at Brookfield Zoo in Chicago for 82 years, outliving multiple generations of zookeepers, every animal that arrived with him, and most of the humans who visited him as children, and then brought their own children, and then their grandchildren. He died in 2016, at 83 years old. A cockatoo. The average house cat lives 12 to 15 years. The average dog, 10 to 13. Cookie outlived 5 or 6 generations of both. When researchers looked at what Cookie represented, what the biology behind his lifespan meant, they found something that changes how you think about every parrot alive today. Not just how long they live. What happens to a brain that keeps running for that long? Most animals follow a rule. Body size and lifespan are connected. Bigger animal, longer life. A mouse lives 2 years. A horse lives 25. An elephant can reach 70. Birds, as a category, already break this rule. A robin weighs 80 grams and can live 17 years. A flamingo lives 40 years. Given their size, birds live roughly 3 times longer than mammals of the same body weight. And parrots break the bird rule. In 2022, a team from the Max Planck Institute of Animal Behavior published the first large-scale study of parrot longevity. Lead researcher Smeele and his team compiled data from more than 130,000 individual parrots across 1,000 zoos worldwide. Their findings on 217 parrot species showed a lifespan range so extreme, it barely seems like it belongs to one animal family. At the short end, the fig parrot, average lifespan 2 years. At the long end, the scarlet macaw, average lifespan 30 years. Average lifespan, not maximum. That means a typical scarlet macaw, not a record-breaking one, living under normal conditions, reaches 30 years. African greys, the species we focused on throughout this series, regularly reach 40 to 60 years in captivity. Some documented cases exceed 70. In a bird the size of a small cat, this is not a quirk. This is a biological feature that required explanation. And when researchers tried to explain it, they found something that nobody had clearly demonstrated before in parrots. Smeele's team tested 2 hypotheses for why some parrot species live so much longer than others. Hypothesis 1. Larger brains take longer to develop, so species with larger brains need more time, and therefore live longer, to grow into their cognitive capacity. Hypothesis 2. Larger brains make parrots more intelligent, and that intelligence helps them survive, so species with larger brains live longer because they are better at not dying. The data supported hypothesis 2 towards not the developmental argument, the survival argument. Parrots with larger brains relative to body size lived longer, not because they needed more time to grow, but because their cognitive ability allowed them to solve problems that would have killed a less intelligent animal. Running out of food. A parrot with a large brain finds something new to eat. Encountering a predator? A more intelligent parrot finds a better escape route. Navigating a changed environment? The parrot, with greater cognitive flexibility, adapts. Intelligence as a survival advantage. A larger brain as a tool for staying alive longer. This relationship between brain size and lifespan, which had been suggested for primates and other mammals, had never before been demonstrated specifically in parrots. Until 2022. 217 species. 130,000 individual birds. The data was unambiguous. Now, here's the part that changes how you think about the parrot in your house. A human who lives to 80 has accumulated 80 years of experience, of pattern recognition, of remembered relationships, remembered dangers, remembered solutions to problems they encountered and solved and filed somewhere for later. We call this wisdom when it's in a person. What do we call it in a parrot who has been doing the same thing for 60 years? An African gray parrot at age 60 has had, conservatively, 6 decades of social observation, 6 decades of tracking which vocalizations produce which responses, 6 decades of environmental pattern recognition, seasonal changes, sound patterns, the behavior of the specific humans in its environment. The researcher Claudio Mello, a professor of behavioral neuroscience at Oregon Health and Science University, made a comparison that I have not been able to stop thinking about. He said, "Parrots are to other birds what humans are to other primates. Humans ended up with bigger brains and more brain cells and more cognitive traits, including language, than primates. Parrots have bigger brains than other birds and more communication skills, and they have similar conserved genetic elements that set them apart. The biological infrastructure, the hardware, and then 60 years to run on it. A 60-year-old African gray has been running on that hardware for longer than most humans are alive. Here's what science has not yet fully answered, and I want to be honest about this gap. We know that parrot brains are capable of sustained, complex learning across a long lifespan. We know that the cognitive abilities documented in young parrots, the vocabulary, the categorization, the inference, the social reading, do not disappear with age. In many cases, they appear to deepen. What we do not yet have: systematic longitudinal studies of parrot cognition across their full lifespan. Studies that follow the same animals from youth through old age and document what accumulates. Alex died at 31 Tartar. Griffin was still actively being studied when the research continued. Cookie, the 83-year-old cockatoo, was studied behaviorally in his final years, but not with the cognitive tools that current neuroscience has available. The question of what 60 years of cognitive accumulation actually produces in a parrot brain, what the architecture looks like, what the knowledge base contains, what the depth of pattern recognition represents, that question is genuinely open. But here's what the available evidence suggests. When Irene Pepperberg worked with Alex for 30 years, she described him at the end of his life as still growing, still surprising her, still not having reached a ceiling. He died at 31. An African gray can live to 60. Here's why I think this matters for anyone who lives with a parrot. You are not living with an animal at a fixed point of cognitive development. You are living with an animal whose brain was built for accumulation, whose lifespan was extended precisely because of what that accumulation is worth, whose evolutionary history selected for the combination of long life and large brain, because the two together produce something more valuable than either alone. The parrot who has been with you for 10 years has been studying you for 10 years. Not passively, actively, with a specific cognitive architecture that the Max Planck study identified as the engine of parrot longevity, the architecture that keeps them alive precisely because it keeps learning. If your parrot is 20, they have been running that architecture for 20 years. If your parrot is 40, they have been running it for 40. The question is not whether your parrot is smart. The question is how much of what they know about you has no parallel in any other mind on earth. Because nobody else has been paying attention to you for that long with that specific set of tools. Let me come back to Cookie. 83 years. At Brookfield Zoo, the keepers who worked with Cookie in his last decade had not been born when he arrived. The zoo itself had been rebuilt around him. The city outside had transformed entirely. He outlived the context he was born into, and kept going. There is something about that I find difficult to fully articulate. A parrot brain, running for 83 years on hardware that was built for survival through intelligence, accumulating, adapting, continuing, in a world that had entirely changed around it. We do not know what 83 years of parrot cognition contains. We have never had the tools to look. But the Max Planck study tells us that the length of the life and the size of the brain are not independent variables. They are a system. They develop together. They work together. The long life is not a side effect. The long life is the point. A parrot brain, given enough time, becomes something that no shorter-lived animal can become. We have not yet built the science to know exactly what that is. But Cookie was 83 years old. And somewhere in what remained of that brain, the accumulated pattern of 8 decades of living, watching, surviving, was something that had no equivalent anywhere else in the room. I want to know, how old is your parrot? And have you noticed something change in them over the years? Something that wasn't there when they were young. Not a trick. Not a trained behavior. Something that felt like it arrived with time. Drop it in the comments. I read every single one. And here's what I keep thinking about. If Alex hadn't died at 31, if he had reached 60, what do you think Pepperberg would have found? Because the Max Planck data says the brain that was producing binary and understanding 0 at 31 was not done. It was barely halfway. See you in the next one.